we have a decent gathering. Good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Vijendra, and welcome to the next edition of the official webinar of the IIMM State Chapter Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. Today, it's an honor and privilege to have Dr. Manisha Mane, Madam, on a very interesting topic that is comprehending immunofluorescence and its diagnostic applications in autoimmune disorders. Thank you so much, Madam, for accepting to have this talk. It's really a privilege to listen to you. And over to you, Madam, for this talk.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Vijendra, sir. So let me start because topic is bit broad. I think I should start now. Let me share my slide. Is it visible, sir?
Yes, Madam, is visible.
I think I didn't click my video. Can you do it, sir?
I didn't get you. Say that again, please.
My video is on or off, sir?
No, it's off.
Okay. 1 minute. Okay, sir?
Yeah, we can see you. Perfect.
Okay. Yes, sir. Slide is visible?
Yes, all good.
Okay. But now I can't see the chart, I think. So how many are PGs there?
I would not know. As of now, there
Okay.
are 65 participants.
Okay.
Generally,
Okay.
it bumps up to 100 plus.
Okay.
People will do join in.
Yeah, they'll join.
Yeah.
So today's topic is comprehending immunofluorescence and its diagnostic applications in autoimmune disorders. So many of you might be already doing uh, this immunofluorescence microscopy, particularly for autoimmune disorders in your institution. Many of you may not doing. So I assume the participants at different levels will start with the basic, and even if you're doing, it will help you, and even if you're not doing, it will motivate you to do. So let us start with the learning objectives. So by this end of this session, I want all of you to able to understand the principles and immunological basis of immunofluorescence, interpret immunofluorescence patterns and disease specific autoantibodies, integrate IF into diagnostic algorithms, and you should know and how it is done reflex testing. Then I want you to recognize factors affecting test performance and result interpretation. And definitely, I want you to be able to apply quality assurance, standardization, and reporting principles. You may find I am running through the slides faster at some, only to cover the whole thing. Okay, so the basic thing which we assume you already know, I may go a little faster. So let us start with clinical prologue because purposeful learning is always important. You should know why you are learning something. So let us start with this case. A 24-year-old woman presented with persistent fatigue, intermittent photosensitivity, painless oral ulcers, mild arthralgia involving the small joints of the hands. So initial investigations revealed mild anemia, elevated ESR, while routine biochemistry and urine analysis were unremarkable. So nothing much. Although she did not fulfill the criteria of SLE, an evolving autoimmune disease was suspected, and patient's sample was sent for ANIT-IF testing, which is found to be positive with the titer of 1 is to 640, which is, I mean, significant. With the homogeneous pattern, again, pattern is significant, which is strongly associated with the SLE. And so the reflex testing was done. Reflex testing is something which is not been prescribed by the clinician, but one test is positive and this is automatic lab algorithm. So ANA is positive, and without any prescription or information by clinician, we go for that particular test. And so the laboratory has done anti-DS DNA IF testing, and it is found to be positive. So 6 months later, in some same case, she developed inflammatory arthritis, proteinuria, fulfilling the classification criteria for SLE or systemic lupus erythematosus. So we diagnosed the case 6 months before the clinical manifestation. And there are many studies, and particularly this study is very interesting, where in this they have collected some 30 million samples from the 5 million uh, army people in the US, and they tested prospectively, and they found that 88% of SLE patients were seropositive up to 9.4 years before diagnosis. So out of this all 5 million cases, 135 I think were positive for SLE in the later study course. And out of that, they could diagnose 88%, 135, 124 were positive earlier. So ANA appear first, followed by sequential disease-specific autoantibodies. What are those? We will discuss later. So basically, serological autoimmunity precedes clinical disease, enabling earlier diagnosis and prevention of complications. So usually in most of the disease, microbiologist role comes where the disease already been manifestation, and we want to try to know the cause of the infectious cause of the particular disease. But when it comes to any diagnosis, particularly for autoimmune disorders, we are in, I mean, we can say we are helping clinician to diagnose the disease. So it precedes the preclinical disease, or precedes the clinical disease, which is very, very important. So what exactly this preclinical SLE? So here, disease-specific autoantibodies may be the earliest detectable marker of autoimmune disease, often appearing months to years before clinical symptoms. So now we are talking about disease-specific autoantibodies. Even they occur, or they appear before the SLE manifestation. Like in case of SLE, particularly reflex testing, we did anti-DS DNA. So that was also positive. And in particular, this study, it was seen like 2.2 years it preceded the clinical manifestation. So the preclinical phase represents a critical window for early diagnosis, and so the intervention, and so the prevention of the complication. You know, autoimmune disorders itself is not a big issue, but the complication related to it makes the life morbid. Then anti-RO, anti-SM, anti-DNA, and anti-phospholipid antibodies may appear months or years before the onset of SLE. So how it happens? So we are saying this is the preclinical SLE. So patient is not manifesting any clinical symptoms, but any anti-nuclear antibody test is positive. So this is a preclinical benign autoimmunity, and that leads to, as the time goes on, deposition of those autoantibodies in the skin, leading to clinical manifestation. And if it is neglected and not intervened, it may lead to autoantibody deposition in other organs, leading to complications like nephritis and cerebritis involving CNS system, kidney, and if it is systemic disease, anywhere in the body. So before we discuss diagnosis of autoimmunity or autoimmune disorders, let us go through the autoimmunity. All of you know autoimmunity is something where the loss of immunological self-tolerance leading to immune responses against self-antigen. And that led to tissue injury and autoimmune disease. So generally what happens whenever foreign antibody invade, our innate immunity and adaptive immunity get activated, but they don't get activated against self-antigen because self-tolerance is there. But if it is lost, then the same antigens, when they are leading to formation of autoantibodies, they might act against the self antigen, leading to tissue damage. And as you know, it can be classified as systemic and organ specific. I won't go into the detail, but there are more than 80 autoimmune diseases have been identified, and many of them we can diagnose with the ANA immunofluorescence. So, what are the different diagnostic modalities for the autoimmune diseases? We have immunofluorescence assay technique, we have ELISA, we have immunoblot assay, we have line immunoassay, we have chemiluminescence immunoassay, we have recent advances, we can say multiplex bead based assay, where the laser induced fluorescence is based on the laser fluorescence, and there are chip based assays as well as. So for the till now, the all rheumatology associations or the SLE association, everybody they say IFA technique is the best pre-screening or the screening first line screening method. So what is immunofluorescence, which is the scope of our today's topic as well. So fluorescent dye is used to conjugate the antibody, and such label antibody is used to detect the antigen or the antigen antibody complexes. It can be direct, it can be indirect. You know what is direct and what is indirect. So direct, where direct antibody or direct labeled antibody is used, and indirect where unlabeled primary antibody first bind to the antigen and we are using fluorochrome labeled secondary antibody. So direct antibody or direct immunofluorescence is faster, but indirect immunofluorescence is highly sensitive as well as very cost effective, because we don't have to use many primary antibodies, the labeled antibodies, because single fluorochrome labeled secondary antibody can detect multiple of antigens and multiple of antibodies. So usually these are the fluorochromes used when it comes to any IF. We are using FITC, fluorescein isothiocyanate, which is the most commonly used, which fluoros green in color. So what this test, where we can use this test, what are the applications of this test? So definitely to detect the anti-nuclear antibodies, to detect the anti-neutrophil cytoplasmic antibodies, to detect the anti-DS DNA, to detect the anti-GBM antibodies, to detect the endomysial antibodies, and also detect viral, bacterial, and parasitic infections. But our scope is today only to the ANA. So when it comes to anti-nuclear antibodies, as you know, these are the heterogeneous group of autoantibodies directed against the, 1 minute. So directed against the cell nucleus and its components. Okay. So ANA is predominantly immunoglobulin G, followed by IgM and IgA. And these names, you might find it difficult if you are like first time going through this particular IF session. There are biochemical characteristics based autoantigens like DNA, histones, RNPs. There are disease associated like Sjogren's syndrome A, SSA, and SSB. There are based on the name of the first patient identified like Smith antibody, SM, RO, LA. So this exhibit no organ specificity and no species specificity. That is the thing which is like very useful when it comes to the its application for the diagnosis. If you are going to learn about the ANA-IF, you must know what is ICAP, because when we started doing IF testing, we were not aware and we were not following ICAP. But now it is for the universal reporting and the uniform reporting, we need to follow the ICAP guidelines. And so if you're learning first time, go with the ICAP, try to report following the ICAP guidelines. So what exactly this ICAP? This is the International Consensus on ANA Patterns. So somebody was telling nucleolar, cytoplasmic, nucleonucleolar, nucleocytoplasmic. So these terms, different terms were used in different countries by different people. So ICAP has made one propose the different diseases. We will discuss in detail how to go about it, how to report the ANA patterns. And also now they propose to use the term HEP2 immunofluorescence assay instead of saying ANA testing or ANA-IF testing. So I might still say ANA-IF because I used to I used to use that term, but ideally we should use the term HEP2 IFA test when we are doing this. So this is your cell, this is your cell membrane, this is your nucleus, this is your nucleolus, and these are the nuclear dots. Now, when it comes to nuclear pattern, you can say fluorescence is seen in the nucleus. Nucleoli are unstained, and all this spherical structure are the nucleus. Surrounded is the cytoplasm. Cytoplasm is not fluorosed. So this is typical nuclear pattern. Second is where again nucleus is been fluorosed, but here you can say nucleolus are the darker or the bright, and so it is called nucleolar pattern. Cytoplasm you can't see. The third pattern, cytoplasmic pattern, where you can see nucleus as well as nucleoli are unstained, whereas the cytoplasm is stained and fluorosed and seen bright. So if you are doing first thing, whenever you see the slide, you try to differentiate whether it is nuclear pattern, whether it is nucleolar pattern, whether it is cytoplasmic pattern. Once you able to understand, differentiate nuclear from cytoplasmic, so you have understood it is nuclear pattern, then go second step, like whether it is homogeneous or it is speckled. Homogeneous, smooth brightenings, or speckled where the speckles are seen. Okay, homogeneous is gone. Then when it is you able to differentiate, it is nuclear speckled pattern. Then you have to go whether it is fine speckled or whether it is coarse speckled. Okay. Same way in the cytoplasmic pattern, different patterns are there, whether coarse speckle, fine speckle, fibrillar patterns. So we'll see in detail. So you should know the substrate used in ANA also. So before we got our human substrate, we were using non-human substrates like chicken erythrocytes and tissue sections like rat or mouse kidney. Still we use in some cases, and liver, mouse stomach. But of course, there are some limitation compared to human substrate. Like these nuclei are small, and so the resolution is not very clear. Then Sjogren syndrome A or SSA antibodies are poorly expressed in this, so we can't make out the presence of SSA antibodies. PCNA or centromere antigens are totally absent, so not useful for anti-centromere or anti-PCNA antibody detection. And of course, sensitivity is very low. When it comes to human substrate, there are two kinds of human leukocytes and tissue culture cells, in which the most commonly and all what we are using is the HEP2 cell, which is derived from human epithelial cell line of laryngeal carcinoma. And there are many advantages about it, like it is highly sensitive, detect more than some 100 type of anti-nuclear antibodies, and so the wide range of ANA patterns. It is a human cell line, better antigen representation than animal tissue, of course. Nuclei are larger, so resolution and excellent visualization is there. Then it appears in the monolayer growth, so all the cells and all the nuclei are clearly visible. And most importantly, these are the cancer cells, so high mitotic activity is there, and so enable detection of mitosis related antigens as well, which are like centromere and mitotic spindle, which we couldn't do in the non-human substrates. These are different autoantigens. Like when it comes to nuclear antigens, there are double stranded DNA, dsDNA, single stranded DNA, and RNA. Then there are cytoplasm related like RO52, CHO1, PL7, and SRP. There are very specific autoantigens like anti-centromeres or antibodies against the centromeres. So these are the different autoantigens. They express more than 100 autoantigens, making them ideal substrate for ANA detection by indirect immunofluorescence. Then what are the drawbacks and where we need to use something else? So when it comes to RO60 or SSA, this has been expressed very poorly in HEP2 and may lead to false negative results. And solution is HEP 2000, where this RO60 is properly expressed and we can detect it. And why it is important to RO60 detection? Because this SSA RO60 is been transferred from mother to baby. So it is essential in women of childbearing age to detect the neonatal lupus. It is very, very important early detection of neonatal lupus or intervention to prevent the neonatal lupus and congenital heart block. And in this case, Hep2, instead of Hep2, Hep2000 substrate is far better because it is transfected particularly with RO60 cDNA, and that's why overexpress this particular antigen, which can be detected very easily. Then there is one Hep2010 substrate as well, which is developed by Euroimmune for ANA indirect immunofluorescence. And this particularly is having increased mitotic index. So when it comes to visualization of mitosis associated autoantibody like centromeres or spindle fibers or pneuma or the CNPF or mid-body, it acts far better than the Hep2. But of course, Hep2 can detect all these things because it is a bit expensive when it is compared to Hep2. So when you are understanding the patterns, you need to know the cell cycle as well, what we are seeing, where we are seeing, which phase we are seeing. So you know the mitotic cycle, there is resting phase and there is mitotic phase. So most of the time cell is in the resting phase, very for less time it is in the mitotic phase. Same way Hep2 substrates predominantly contain interphase or the resting phase cells and very few into the mitotic phase. uh, and this ANA staining pattern vary with the stage of the cell cycle. So most of the ANA patterns are observed in this interphase pattern. And there will be few mitotic 10% mitotic cells, and if they show some particular patterns, that helps again in the diagnosis of or directing some particular autoimmune disorders. So interphase is the longest phase, as we have seen. Then nuclear membrane remains intact in case of interphase. So when you are seeing the nuclear pattern, first you have to see where is the nucleus, where is the cytoplasm. Once you able to locate the cell, then the next step is whether it is in the interphase or whether it is in the mitotic phase. So you should know the characteristic of the cell when it is in the interphase. So when cell is in the interphase, chromosomes are present as diffuse chromatin network within the nucleus. Okay. The nuclear membrane remains intact. Nucleoli are prominent and clearly visible, and cytoplasmic organelles or cytoskeletal structure is also very well defined. Most nuclear and cytoplasmic ANA patterns are best visualized during this stage. So first try to see the cells which are in the interphase to know the general or the broad pattern. Okay. So these are the patterns which tell you whether cell is in the interphase or the mitotic phase. So you can see this first and the last, which are in the interphase. As it goes to the mitotic cycle, like from prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase, you can see cell membrane is not very clear. Chromatin material is not scattered. Now it is in the making a it is present in the mid plate, and then it is in the dividing stage, typical of telophase. So if you know the cell cycle, how it looks when seen under the fluorescent microscope, it becomes easy to know whether cell is in the interphase like this or cell is in the mitotic phase. So once you know this, you need to know little clinical knowledge about the autoimmune disorders and its correlation with the ANA prevalence. Which antibodies associated or strongly associated or very disease specific to the related to particular autoimmune disease. So when it comes to SLE, prevalence, first thing you should know. So 95 to 100% is the, if we are like in Sanat Nagar also, most common presentation overlap is very common, in particular in India. Let me tell you, there is one very beautiful study from CMC Vellore. So in particular, they have compared the Indian demography or epidemiology with the foreign one, and overlap syndromes where the mixed, like SLE is also there and mixed patterns are there. It's very, very common in India. So basically, SLE is common and it is associated with many other autoimmune disorders also. Followed by drug-induced lupus erythematosus, 100%. It is correlated. Rheumatoid arthritis, maybe patients with only 20 to 40% of the patients with rheumatoid arthritis show the ANA positive results. When it comes to systemic sclerosis, again, it is very high correlation with the ANA, 85 to 95%. When it comes to Sjogren's syndrome, again, 70 to 80%. When it comes to autoimmune hepatitis, nowadays we are getting lot of samples, not only from rheumatology, but medicine, because there is lot of correlation and many studies are coming up in a prevalence, increasing in a prevalence or the observed in a prevalence along with the autoimmune hepatitis as well as many infectious diseases as well. So when it comes to Sanat Nagar, and if we see prevalence and the pattern, so most commonly we are seeing overlap syndrome, which like correlate with the Tamil Nadu CMC Bello study, and most common pattern is the nuclear speckled. Again, it is because nuclear speckled, again, it is very common in healthy patient also, and it is something very common in the overlap syndromes also. So clinical correlation is very, very important. Then in case of SLE, which is 50%, 15% in like percentage prevalence in at Sanat Nagar, what we are doing. And the most common pattern we are seeing among SLE is the nuclear homogeneous and or speckled. Sjogren's syndrome followed by 10% prevalence is there, and typical nuclear speckled patterns are seen. And of course, we have to do reflex testing for SLE, Sjogren's syndrome, recurrent pregnancy loss, and non-hematological illness, because everything will be seen nuclear speckled pattern. So I was talking about the ICAP. So we have written here nuclear speckled, nuclear homogeneous, but this is not the way to report. So now you are reporting, you have to go in this algorithm and name whether it is AC1 or AC4 or AC31, so that if our report, if patient has been tested in ESIC lab and he goes overseas and shows the report, they should able to understand our report. So this is the final, I mean, uniform reporting is the main purpose why we need to follow the ICAP. So so basically how this algorithm works. So we have Hep2 substrate, we have patient sample, we did the testing. If it is negative, again, you should not say negative for antinuclear antibodies. Your report should say negative, but of course you should mention AC0. If it is nuclear pattern, so we have to, if it is positive, or then it can be nuclear pattern, it can be cytoplasmic, it can be mitotic, or it can be unclassified. You are not able to find out. Usually it won't happen. Okay. Even it happens, we have to confirm it with the blot. So these are the patterns. So if you find out it is, or able to differentiate, appreciate it is nuclear pattern, then you have to see whether it is homogeneous. If it is nuclear and homogeneous, then you have to report it as a AC1. So ANA HEP2 IFA, HEP2 IFA is positive, nuclear homogeneous pattern, and the interpretation is AC1. Then if it is speckled, then whether it is dense fine speckled or fine speckled, so based on that it is AC2 or AC30. So it is very difficult to understand if you don't know what is AC2 is related to with which antibody. Like homogeneous uh, uh, AC1, it is related to many antibodies, particularly dsDNA. Then centromere, it is very particular. So it is already name suggests that it is anti-centromere antibodies. So definitely everybody remembers AC3 is related with the anti-centromere antibodies. So this is the way you should go. This is out of scope of this 1 hour session. What is, we can't discuss all the things, but we want to learn how we should go about it. So once it is nuclear, we have to see homogeneous or speckled. Once it is speckled, we have to see whether it is fine, discrete, or coarse. Centromere again is a very specific entity. Nucleolar again, it is a very specific entity. So whether if it is nucleolar, if it is homogeneous or clumpy or punctate. Then nuclear envelope again is very specific entity where the nuclear membrane only will be seen fluorosed. So it is easy to make out. So whether it is smooth or punctate. If it is cytoplasmic, so whether it is fibrillar pattern or speckled pattern, if it is speckled, whether dense, fine or discrete, whether it is antimitochondrial antibodies or it is targeting Golgi or it is rods and rings, because mitochondria and Golgi are the specific features in the cytoplasm of any nucleus, and so the pattern is also very specific, which we can make out with the practice. So first we will discuss nuclear pattern. So these are some slides we have taken from the ICAP and some are there from our department. So so first we'll go with the nuclear pattern. It can be nuclear homogeneous, it can be nuclear speckled, it can be centromere pattern, it can be nuclear dots, or it can be nuclear pattern. So nuclear homogeneous is very clear. Can you, anyone just pick up? Are you able to follow me?
Yes, ma'am. Perfectly.
Okay. So, nuclear homogeneous is very clear entity. This is something I think when you are starting to do the testing, you should try to differentiate and appreciate nuclear homogeneous. If you learn this, then go to the next stage. It is non-homogeneous. So whether it is nuclear, oh yes, then whether it is homogeneous or non-homogeneous. If it is homogeneous, okay, done. If it is non-homogeneous, whether it is nuclear speckled, where the nucleoli are not involved, but all other part of the nucleus is involved. So it is nuclear speckled. Centromere pattern is very specific, where only centromeres are targeted, and there are almost like more than 10 to 20 dots will be seen. See, you might say nuclear dots and centromere pattern looks same. The only difference is in nuclear dots that will be not more than 10. This will be almost more than 20. So nuclear dots, and third is the nuclear pattern, nucleolar pattern, where the nucleolus of the nucleus is only stained. How it is associated with different diseases, we'll see later, but first we'll try to know the different patterns. Negative pattern. So this is the easiest one. You should start with but when you start initially, you feel everything is fluorosed, okay? So always compare first, see the positive control, see the negative control, and if you are doing this, then negative pattern, first thing you can exclude or diagnose the negative patterns particularly. So it means no specific nuclear cytoplasmic or mitotic staining is identified. It indicates absence of clinically relevant ANA patterns, but not necessarily mean absence of autoantibodies or autoimmune disease, because it all depends upon which substrate you are using. Some antibodies, like we have discussed, RO52 and RO60 and JO1, may be ANA negative on HEP2 IFA despite being clinically significant. So there are clinical manifestation, and your ANA IF is using the HEP2 is negative, uh, or the negative pattern is there, or AC0 is there, then you should go for the HEP 2000 or HEP 2010. Screening dilution 1:80 recommended when clinical suspicion is high, and 1:160 recommended for low pretest probability or general population, which improves the specificity. We will see when it comes to the positive. Second is the nuclear homogeneous pattern, that is AC1. which is typical smooth uniform fluorescence throughout the nucleus or nucleoplasm. Okay. Mitotic chromatin, they are cells in the interphase. These are the cells in the mitotic phase, and where you can see condensed mitotic chromatin, which is strongly and uniformly stained. If these two things are there, then we can say this is nuclear homogeneous pattern, and target antigens are dsDNA, nucleosomes, that is chromatin, and histones. So those who which are present in the nuclei. And, and associated diseases are the SLE, drug induced lupus, autoimmune hepatitis. So, this is something to start with, you can diagnose and correlate. Recommended follow up test or the reflex testing. So, if this you have done this test and you could appreciate it is AC1 nuclear homogeneous pattern, the typical mitotic chromatin, uniformly stained mitotic chromatin and homogeneously stained nucleoplasms, then you should go, if you are suspecting clinically SLE, anti-DS DNA, or if you are suspecting drug-induced lupus, you should go for the antihistone. So you can go with ELISA or the antigen-specific IFA test like 3,3-DS Lucily, which we use for anti-DS DNA, or you can go for the blot, which is again specific, or you can go for the mono ELISA. Okay, so this is usually the algorithm we do for the detection of the autoimmune disorders. Second is the nuclear dense fine speckle pattern. So when you can see some pattern like this, where the nucleus is stained, cytoplasm is not involved, there is, this is not homogeneous pattern, you can say this is grainy pattern. Okay, so with practice you will know what is homogeneous and grainy, but at least in this slide you must be I think you can appreciate the grainy pattern, where the fine dense speckles throughout the nucleoplasm are seen. And this particularly you have to look for the cells in the mitotic phase, where metaphase chromatin brightly stained with the same dense fine speckled appearance. Okay, it is not condensed, but it is dense fine speckled appearance. And here this kind of most common in a pattern in the healthy individuals. I told you the fine speckled pattern is very much associated with the healthy individuals, and particularly when this metaphase, such kind of metaphase pattern is seen, the target antigen is DFS70, which is present or which indicates that patient is healthy. So frequently seen in non autoimmune conditions negatively associated with SLE or the systemic autoimmune rheumatic diseases when isolated. But if your substrate doesn't contain DFS70, then you can miss it and you can diagnose it as a disease or the positive for ANA or AC2, AC3 or 4. So confirm with anti-DFS70 antibody assay. If isolated anti-DFS70 positive, then SARD is unlikely, autoimmune rheumatic disease is unlikely. But if clinically highly suspected, then we can go for the reflex testing. So this is very crucial, and we have to be very particular to rule out the DFS70 and don't rush to the diagnosis that it is positive, or it is sometimes it look like AC1, sometimes it look like AC3 and 4. So we should rule out the anti-DFS70 antibody assay. And if you are using Euroimmun, I think they have no, in blood they have involved DFS70. So all such cases you can go for the anti-DFS70 antibody assay or the immunoblot which contain antibody against DFS70 to rule out this. So Day's finds typical pattern clinical significance. So anti-DFS is negative and it is strongly clinically, patient is having clinical manifestation, then how it is associated with the diseases. So it is reported in 6% of Hashimoto thyroiditis. It is associated with DIL, chronic infections, as well as neoplastic diseases. And this is particular study where he has found like 47% cases no apparent disease, but in some cases it is associated with the different autoimmune disorders. Then third, AC3 is the centromere pattern. So AC1 homogeneous you have seen, AC2 we have to particular to rule out the DFS70 to uh, correlate or to associate it with the autoimmune disorder. Now we are coming to the third, that is centromere pattern. These are the very easy to understand. Okay, appreciation is very easy. There will be discrete core speckles 40 to 80 per nucleus. So many star like picture is, if it is seen under fluorescence microscope, then it is centromere pattern. And of course metaphase mitotic cells you have to see, where you can say the metaphase chromosome plate in mitotic cell which is bright. So usually it is associated with the Raynaud's phenomenon and limited cutaneous systemic sclerosis, where the target antigens are the centromere ENPA, CENPB, centromere C. So with the three antibodies. And when it comes to follow up test, we have to do anti-centromere antibody, especially B, to confirm systemic sclerosis profile. So this is the typical presentation of centromere pattern, easy to differentiate or appreciate and correlate with the, and even it is very antigen specific. Okay, it is not like related to many autoimmune disorder, it is related to very target antigens are quite targeted and limited. Third is again nuclear pattern, where that is speckled. Now it is, they call it fine speckled, but mitotic chromatin is different from the AC2, where even second was the AC2 was the nuclear fine speckled, but mitotic cells were different. Okay, where mitotic chromatin was highly bright, where here mitotic chromatin is negative. You can see this unstained area in the center. So mitotic chromatin is negative, and all cells are showing typical fine speckled pattern. Okay, grainy pattern, bright one. So target antigen here are the SSA or LA or SSB or the LA, also MI2 and TIF1, also with the COO. So associated disease are the Sjogren syndrome, okay, then SLE, then subcutaneous lupus, and also with the dermatomyositis. So if you patient is presented with the, or clinician is suspecting Sjogren's or SLE, reflex testing you should do anti RO60, because again Hep2 is not very good for the RO60, so you can go for the ELISA or the immunoblot, and for the anti-La, or you can go for the Hep2000 and confirm the Sjogren syndrome. If you are suspecting myopathies, then you can go for the immunoblot, which is particularly dedicated to the myositis profile, and confirm the myopathy disease. So I hope you understood the difference between AC2 and AC4. Both look same if you are seeing first time, but AC2 chromatin will be bright stain, and in AC4, which is associated with the myopathies and Sjogren syndrome, the chromatin is unstained. Then nuclear course pattern. So I think slide was not changed. Okay, so it looked quite AC4 and 5 quite look same only. Okay, the only change is the fine and coarse here. Though we have not changed, I have not changed slide because even I kept, they have kept the same slide. I think we have to, so we can say AC4 and 5 look quite similar. With lot of practice, we can see the fine and coarse, but recommended follow-up tests are very important. So many times hematologists, they prescribe ANA testing along with the ANA profile, because they are suspecting particular disease. and you should go along with it. So associated disease here are similar: SLE, systemic autoimmune rheumatic disease, mixed connective tissue diseases, and undifferentiated connective tissue diseases. So when ICAP was not there, AC4 and 5 considered together, and it might be like SSA, SSB, or SM, or RNA polymerase 3, or the RNPs. And here you have to do the follow-up test like ENE profile to confirm the anti-Smith antibodies. And if you are suspecting systemic sclerosis, then go for the anti-RNA polymerase 3, ELISA, or the immunoblot. When it comes to nuclear dots pattern, there is AC6 and AC7. So again, these dots will be not like centromere where the 40 to 60 dots are seen. It is totally different. Here, again, there are two patterns. So very less dots, less than 10. And in that, we can say multiple nuclear dots and few nuclear dots. And they are associated with the different conditions. Particularly few nuclear dots you can rule out because it has low positive predictive value, and you can neglect it, I can say. And but if it is multiple nuclear factors like 6 to 10, then it might be associated with the broad spectrum autoimmune diseases, including PBC or the inflammatory conditions. Then come to the nucleolar pattern. So we have completed the homogeneous nuclear pattern and the speckled nuclear pattern. Now coming to the nucleolar pattern, where the nucleoli present in the nucleus are stained. So again, there are three are there: homogeneous, clumpy, and discrete one. So most common are the homogeneous and clumpy. So where diffuse fluorescence of the entire nucleolus while the metaphase plate shows no staining. So this is again very specific, easy to understand, easy to appreciate. So nucleoli, bright nucleoli are seen compared to the nucleoplasm, and of course there is no cytoplasm is involved. This particularly it is associated with systemic sclerosis and systemic sclerosis AIM overlap syndrome. When it comes to clumpy nucleolar, it is again found in patient with systemic sclerosis. So nucleolar pattern are strongly, and if we say disease specific, they are associated, strongly associated with the systemic sclerosis disease. Then AC 8 and 9. Then come the cytoplasmic pattern. So usually nuclear pattern homogeneous is very common, nuclear speckled is very common, followed by nucleolar pattern. Cytoplasmic pattern are quite rare compared to the nuclear pattern. I can say most commonly what I have seen is the even not this one, maybe mitotic chromosomals and spindle fibers we see lot of time, but it is not very significant. So I've not seen much, okay, to be frank. So it can be fibrillar linear actin pattern. So you can see the actin cells, linear cytoplasmic fibers spanning to the long axis of the cell. So first you have to see nuclei are not uh, bright, and the cytoplasm is here stained. So cytoplasm is stained, so we are saying it is a cytoplasmic pattern. Once we confirm it is cytoplasmic pattern, when then we will see whether it is fibrillar pattern, actin like, or the filamentous, very thin filamenti, or it is fine speckled, like it look like a homogeneous pattern, but ulta, here nucleus is not homogeneous, cytoplasm is homogeneously stained. And these are the three patterns we can say. Most I mean literature says these are quite common among the cytoplasmic patterns. Then comes the mitotic patterns, very common mitotic patterns, but association with the, there is no strong association with the autoimmune disorders. So you can see centrosomes, spindle fibers. So these all are the cells in the mitotic phase. So normal phase or the resting nuclei are not bright or not stained. Only the cells in the mitotic phase here are the stain one and looks the bright. Then seeing the pattern, these are the different names, like this mitotic pattern. This is the centrosome mitotic pattern. This is the spindle fibers. You can clearly say this, see the bright spindle fibers, okay, uh, running from the metaphase to the pole. Then intercellular breach, okay, where the cell is dividing and the intercellular breach is seen bright. And the mitotic chromosomals, where the metaphase plate or the chromatin is seen very, very bright. Same thing is seen in the nucleus homogeneous pattern, AC2 as well as AC3, but there the nuclei also are bright. So when nuclei are not stained and only mitotic or the resting cells are not stained, and only the mitotic chromosomal is bright, then this is the only mitotic pattern and not associated with any particular disease. Okay. Then there are some uncommon patterns, very beautiful to see. This is again, I have seen many times, cytoplasmic reticular AMA. I would say among the cytoplasmic, this is, though it is written uncommon, my personal experience, I have seen many times, which is like anti-mitochondrial antibodies seen in primary biliary cirrhosis, maybe because we have gastroenterology department with us, and also detected in systemic sclerosis and PBC-SSC overlap syndromes. So this is, you can say, this reticular pattern, very typical, and it is like honeycomb appearance. Okay, not exactly there is one honeycomb appearance also, but we can say to start with, it is quite easy to understand and quite common, what I found among the cytoplasmic pattern. Rods and rings, so far I have not seen, most commonly present in the SCV patients who have been treated with particularly this pegylated interferon combination, alpha ribovirin combination therapy. Association they don't know, but there is a nice study where they have studied lot of samples where they could make out the strong association of rod and rings with the SCV patients. And this is again a very typical, you can see the rods as well as the ring patterns. Then, other than autoimmune disorder, it can be positive, and nuclear antibody can be positive in the liver diseases, cancer diseases, infections, skin diseases, and other autoimmune diseases like diabetes. But this is not our scope, but you should know, like, it is positive in many cases, and nowadays many physicians are referring many samples to the lab for the AMA to detect these cases. Sometimes I feel we are overdoing it. We need to do more. Maybe some students can undertake study how the association and which antibodies are associated with which particular disease. So ANA is a very good test. It is a very good, highly sensitive screening test. But again, it is not routinely recommended in particular diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto thyroiditis, multiple myeloma, and fibromyalgia, because it has limited diagnostic value in this particular, and because another reason is we have disease specific biomarkers. Like we can go for the anti-CCP for the rheumatoid arthritis and so on. So this is about the interpretation and appreciating different patterns. How to go about the test and how to interpret it, I will share one video in the end, how to go for the test, what is the test procedure. It has been made by our residents and the faculty. So when it comes to technical consideration, we get the patient sample and we separate, and we get the patient serum, which is serially diluted first, and the highest dilution showing positive fluorescence, we say it is a ANA titer. Dilution 1 is to 40, highly sensitive but lower specificity. 1 is to 80, something is recommended by ICAPS as a screening dilution. So the dilution positive or the titer with 1 is to 80 and above, we should consider and do further reflex testing if needed or correlate clinically. 1 is to 160, is very specific, and more than 1 is to 320, definitely it is clinically significant. So dilution scheme is very, very important. I have seen few labs which don't go for the dilution, maybe to save the time and the reagents, but dilution is very, very important. And of course, as you all of you know, Prozone effect is always there to rule out dilution. Is the repeat testing using higher serum dilution is definitely is required. Then you should know about the blocking effect or the autoantibody masking, because this, if it is one antibody mask the fluorescence produced by the another autoantibody present in the same serum, and so we cannot see the specific pattern, and what pattern we can see we cannot interpret. So mechanism is multiple antibodies compete for the nearby antigen, like here anti-ribosome are there and anti-nucleoli are also there. So if we do dilutions, these are very clearly seen. So again, to prevent the blocking effect or to nullify the blocking effect, dilution is very, very important in the prozone phenomenon. So limitations of ANA testing. Yes, most important limitation, what is seen as positive by one uh, microbiologist or pathologist, maybe another person feel it is negative. So inter-observer variability affects the pattern recognition and also the positive and negative results. So you need to, if you are very new and you are going for reflex testing, always correlate your pattern with the clinical manifestations and with the what reflex testing you are doing. So better you go with the immunoblot to start, even though it is expensive. One, it is confirmative and it is very I mean it gives you feedback what you have done as a reporting in the hep2IF testing or immunofluorescence immunoassay. Then if ANA is positive, it doesn't mean patient is having autoimmune disease always. As we have seen, it is seen in the healthy patient also. Then low titer ANA may be detected in healthy individuals and most do not develop rheumatic diseases. ANA should not be used as a screening test in asymptomatic individuals. Indiscriminate testing increases false positive results and unnecessary treatment of them. So we have to be very careful. Maybe ANA helps in the diagnosis of preclinical SLE, but you should not start the treatment till the clinical manifestations happen. So I say it is helping to prevent the prevent the complications, so that you know you have to do clinical follow up if NA is positive and you are suspecting or few symptoms are there. So talk with your hematologist, correlate clinically, and go for the confirmation in unless you think like now you are pro or you are expert in interpreting the IF report. IIF. Interpret ANA only in the appropriate clinical context, considering the pretest probability of autoimmune disease. Okay, so these are the ANA testing algorithm what we follow here. So we go with the ANA-IF test first, and followed by the uh, right now ELISA we are not doing mono ELISA, but we are doing DSNA, DSDNA test, IF test, and the immunoblot. So how we can go? So if NA is been done on the hep2 cell, it is positive. Yes, go for the patterns, see the patterns whether it is homogeneous AC1 or dense fine speckled. Go for the DFS. If it is positive, it is a healthy. If it is negative, then think of the autoimmune disease. Centromere is very specific. Speckled, again, there are many antibodies, and you have to correlate in the clinical context. If you are suspecting Sjogren syndrome, definitely you have to go for the SSA and SSB specific antibody testing. Okay. Then uh, if test is negative but clinically high suspicion is there, so these are some antibodies which are not detected many times in the hep2 cells, like anti-jo1 or the anti-ssa or the anti-ribosomal preprotein. So you have to think of these antibodies and go for the pattern, go for those particular disease specific testing. And sometimes other patterns without specific antibody testing available, describe the pattern, concern the ICAP, and they can help you definitely. Other applications of immunofluorescence. What is the time? So this is again a different chapter, not scope of this, but you should know, like, along with antinuclear antibodies, we can do antineutrophil cytoplasmic antibodies also, and it is very useful for the diagnosis of ANCA associated with vasculitis. Again, very easy. You do 2 or 3 times. You once you know how P ANCA, C ANCA is looking and how to differentiate it, and then you can diagnose or diseases or this pattern which are associated with granulomatous, with cholangitis, microscopic cholangitis, EGPA, and renal limited pauciumine crescentic glomerulonephritis. So I won't go into the detail, otherwise you will forget what you learned before. So other than this application, yes, I was talking about reflex testing, particularly dsDNA. We are doing regularly, and this is very highly specific. So I would like to talk about this. So if homogeneous pattern is there and you are suspecting SLE, then you can go for detection of the disease specific antibody, that is dsDNA, where here target antigen is dsDNA. And you can go for one more substrate which is very specific to it, that is Cryptridia lucili, which are nothing but the hemoflagellate protozoan. And there are only dsDNA antigens which are like binding with the dsDNA antibody, presenting this typical kinetoplast fluorescence, which is associated with SLE, particularly lupus nephritis. So these are the antibodies against dsDNA positive. This is the antibody against the dsDNA negative. So originally, if it is negative control, it will look like this. This is the stained Cryptridia lucili. Okay. Then only basal body is there. Again, it is negative. But if kinetoplast is been bright and seen properly, then only we can say it is positive for the dsDNA. Easy to do and very specific. Then expanding applications, yes, you can do for many. We have not started yet because of cost effectiveness. I think NIMS is doing all this test. So we can diagnose celiac disease, and there is lot of demand from the super specialty branches. So for the diagnosis of celiac disease, this particular substrate, monkey esophagus human umbilical cord, is seen, and this is typical pattern. So we can say there are other substrates are also available which are targeting very specific disease specific autoantibodies like celiac disease and autoimmune hepatitis, showing the very specific patterns. So this I would like to show. Please go through this testing method. Is it audible?
No, ma'am, it's not audible.
Okay. I'll not audible. Okay. Sound is okay, sir. We can go through the.
No, ma'am, what you could do is just pause it. Just pause it once.
Huh?
Pause it
Yes.
once, and then
Yes.
reshare your screen. Or and while sharing it, just click share with sound. On the right, you'll get an option.
Share with sound.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Stop
Sorry.
sharing.
Okay. 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 Otherwise, sir, I can do one thing.
Mm. Or you could just play the video if you have the video
I
present.
will play the video.
But then, anyways, you'll have to reshare again.
Yeah.
You'll
Yeah.
have to stop sharing, do screen share, and then on the right, click the option share audio or sound also.
Yes.
It's written as share sound on the right.
Okay, share sound.
Yeah. When you click on the share button on the toolbar,
Uh-huh.
when you're
Okay.
choosing entire screen, just on the right, you see extreme right, share sound.
Share. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, 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 yes.
Of PBS should be prepared every day.
It's coming.
1000 microliter of PBS. A fresh solution of PBS should be prepared every day. 1000 microliter of PBS is added to the Eppendorf tubes. And 10 microliter of patient serum is added to the PBS to get 1:100 dilution. Mix thoroughly using a vortex for about 4 seconds. The diluted sample should be used within the same working day. Sample loading is done by adding 30 microliter diluted sample to each reaction field, including positive and negative controls. First, incubation is done by placing biochip slide onto reagent tray and incubated for 30 minutes at room temperature. First, washing is done by rinsing it with PBS tween, followed by immersion in PBS tween for 5 minutes. Then 25 microliter of FITC anti-human IgG conjugate is added. Second, incubation is carried out for 30 minutes at room temperature, and slide should be protected from direct light. Second, washing is done by washing it with fresh PBS tween and immersing it for 5 minutes. Finally, add mounting medium and place the cover slip carefully to avoid air bubbles. Observe under fluorescence microscope.
Madam, you'll have to unmute. We are not able to hear you. Madam, unmute, unmute, unmute.
Yes, sir. Sorry, sir.
Yeah, you'll have to say that again. We missed.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Screen is seen.
Yes, yes.
So we have seen the method. So this is kind of summary. So bottom line is this pattern is just a clue and not a diagnosis. And more you do, more inter-observer differences will be less and you will become a pro. So of course, this IFA test or immunofluorescence assay, Hep2 immunofluorescence assay is having high sensitivity, and these distinctive patterns make IF a very useful tool, particularly for the diagnosis of autoimmune disorders. But its true value lies in appropriate test selection, expert interpretation, and clinical correlation. Okay, this is something we have to do for each test, but here again, it is very, very important. Then disease-specific confirmatory assays refine diagnosis and guide patient management. So this is just a basic screening test, and reflex testing should be the part of your lab algorithm. Immunofluorescence confirms microscopic patterns into meaningful clinical decisions and interventions. So, of course, you do practice and try to appreciate different patterns, but don't forget to listen to your patient, because as Sir William Osler said, patient is the one who is always telling the diagnosis. Okay, so this is thank you to everyone, and thank you to particularly my department who helped me with the preparation of all these slides and particularly this video as well. Okay, so thank you everyone. I'll stop sharing. Okay, so that, okay, I'll stop sharing, right, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I would say, sir, I mean, this is, we can say, sensitization, and all students who want to learn more have to go to the next stage of immersion, which is possible with the workshop. And I think there is some workshop in the August by Dr. Safa, right? So I would
Yes, yes, yes,
say
yes.
ki you
Correct.
can go for any workshop wherever it is available, so that when you see yourself the slides under the microscope, and when you appreciate that, happiness is different and that learning is very enjoyable. So this is, I would say, just a sensitization towards learning more about the IF patterns and its application in the autoimmune disorders. And moreover, if opportunity comes, always I would say ki take initiative doing IF, uh, and as well as immunoblot assay in your department, and don't think it is something which is like pathologist should do. Okay, so immunology is a very important part of microbiology, and we should indulge into it and excel into it. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, madam. It was really interesting, a lot of learning. We ourselves do ANA almost like 3 to 4 times a week. And
Okay.
then I got to learn more about the patterns. Thank you
Yes.
so much, madam.
Yes.
Any questions? We'll just take in questions for maybe like 2, 3 minutes. We've overshooted our time, yes. But then quick questions, if anybody, please put it in the chat box.
Sorry, what is happening?
No, you could stop sharing them.
Okay.
One quick question I'll ask, ma'am.
Yes,
So
sir.
now we use a slide by Nova Light.
Okay.
We don't use the Euroimmune slide. The
Okay.
difference being that on our slide, the circle is completely like Hep2. Whereas I think the Euroimmune slide is like each slot is divided into four different squares. And I think one part has
No, it
the
is two,
Hep2.
sir. It is two. Hep2 and
Okay.
primate they are having.
Okay. So what is the use of that slide in particular? Does it help
Uh,
in any way?
yes, sir. If you are a new person, primate again helps you again more confirmation, sir. So particularly if it is nuclear pattern, you are confused of mixed pattern, and if you are confused whether it is nucleo speckled or the homogeneous, primate patterns will be different and help to differentiate what kind of. I mean, it helps in again confirming the pattern as well, sir. So if you are newcomer, I should say it is bit expensive, but you should go with the Hep2 and primate. Then you don't have to go for the blot sometimes.
Okay. Then I mean, like, do we need to study those patterns separately? What is the best reference that you would say for those?
Not exactly, sir. I mean, it is something which will help you, but if you are not doing it, doesn't mean you are missing anything.
Now, if we want to learn more about the primate patterns,
Haha.
then I mean, like,
Not much is there, sir. This is, I mean, only cytoplasmic, whether it is cytoplasmic or whether it is nuclear, it will be seen.
okay, okay, okay.
Yes.
Another thing is IFA versus blot. What we
Mm-hmm.
have seen is something that comes up IFA positive need not necessarily pick up anything on the blot. This has happened in cases wherein even if the case is a like sure shot SLE, things like dsDNA or ribosomal P protein or even the stones, none of them come positive on the blot. So
Okay.
what could be the reason?
I mean, it was, how much was the titer like, sir?
Titer can be like more than 1,000.
Oh, but totally blot was
Yes,
negative.
blot coming negative. Control has passed, but then blot comes negative. Does it
Okay.
happen? I mean, like, is that expected?
It is not expected, but for some cases, like for the because blot or immunoassay blots are where there are many different types. Some contain only 8 antigen, some contain like 25 antigens. So which blot you are using, again it matters, sir.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if you are doing something particular dsDNA and it is not been, usually dsDNA is included, but for example like RO is there and it is not there in the blot, definitely it will be negative.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. I think I should have included primate cell line as well. So
No,
only thing,
this was I mean like informative enough, ma'am. So now what
okay.
happens, what we have seen is I mean like not many people are into immunofluorescence at their
Yeah,
workplaces
yeah.
or
Yes, sir.
hospital slash lab slash college.
Yes, sir.
So this should probably encourage people to know more about it.
Yes, sir. Yes, definitely.
Anybody, any questions, please?
Okay, will the recording of the session shall be made available? Question for you, sir.
Yes, 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 yes. It is recorded.
Okay, somebody again asks the role of the primate only.
Hmm.
Actually, it looks beautiful, sir. The ratio of nucleus to cytoplasm is different. So there are big, big nuclei, and nucleolus also very big. So what we can say, maybe what we are going from 10x to 100x, and we are seeing the nucleus properly.
Okay, okay. Yes, I totally agree on that. You made it very easy for us to understand the patterns.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we'll call it a day. Thank you so much, madam. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. It went really good. You taught it with patience, and I think, as all say, it was a beautiful class by a like wonderful teacher.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining in. Thank you all. Good night. Thank you, ma'am. Bye.
Bye. Good night, sir.